Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Today, we are recording episode number 33 of the show, and I have right here with me, my guest today is Kelsi Cory. Kelsi is the Chief Executive Officer and also the Chief Recruiting Officer at Cory Executive Recruiting. Welcome to the show, Kelsi.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's such a pleasure to finally actually meet you here. And it's just cool to just see yourself and your own journey out there too. So I'm glad we're able to collaborate together.
Likewise. I'd like to start by asking you to share a little bit about your background with the audience, personal, professional background. How did you get to where you are today?
That's such a good question. I'll try to keep it short. Like many of you out there in the real estate world and property management, I am just the same. I fell into this industry. So kind of a fun story is I was always passionate about real estate. I loved real estate at a young age, at 18. And I didn't know what options were out there, inside the real estate industry. I had no idea property management was a thing at 18 years old. I really just knew of buying and selling houses. And so whenever I remembered I was going out on my own at 18 to go live in an apartment, I was getting toured by a leasing agent. And I was like, wow, this actually seems like a really cool job, just out of high school and whatnot. And before you know it, I kind of asked questions like, how did you get into this? I was really curious. We were in the golf cart and everything and touring, these different apartments. And at that point in time, that lady actually introduced me to a couple of local staffing agencies that specifically recruit inside property management. And so once they made that introduction and I went in and interviewed to actually become a leasing agent, they really liked me and they're like, why don't you come work for us internally? And so that's kind of where my work history started. Was right at 18, out of the gate, I became a receptionist at a real estate property management staffing agency in Denver, Colorado. And that's how I started my career. So I really fell into it. And I kind of found best of both worlds of being a vendor inside the real estate space without completely being on site. So that's a little bit about the beginning of my journey.
Kelsi, why recruiting as a career and also as a business? Because you're a business owner too, and a CEO.
Yes. What was your question again?
Why recruiting?
Oh, why recruiting?
Why did you choose recruiting? You started. You told us how you started in an industry, but what made you choose the recruiting side?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I feel like recruiting chose me. I feel like I didn't choose recruiting. So it was interesting when I started my career, I really fell in love again with what type of positions we were recruiting in, because I was so focused on the real estate aspect. And I also had a really great mentor and leader that I really looked up to. And that's like a big part of my philosophy in life. And so it was funny though, because for the first several years, I was still wondering if recruiting would be a long-term fit for me or not. And I was very entrepreneurial. So even at 18, I knew one day I wanted to own my own company. I just didn't know what that would be like. So I would be at the bars on the weekends talking to my friends saying, what business plan could I do? What can I get into? What can I start from the ground up? And I thought recruiting wasn't sexy enough. I was like, there's got to be something sexier out there. And finally, it really hit home to me that after about 5.5 years into the recruiting world, that this is my gift and I'm actually really good at it. And I'm really good at meeting people, learning people's stories. And I really became, all in. And I realized, actually, I think what I really want to do is take what I do love about the industry and the business, and then how can I kind of create my own and leave out the things that just didn't make sense to me and that I didn't think we were really serving at the best capacity, and really take that leap of faith and go out and start Cory Executive Recruiting. And so that was 4 years ago to this day. So at age 24, I took the leap of faith and I was all in to start CER and really cultivated around relationships versus transactional outcomes. And I couldn't be more happy to be like where I am today.
I want to share with the audience that I had some direct experience with your firm, and I was completely blown away by the experience that I had as a candidate. It wasn't too long ago, and I could tell that there's something special going on out there. I want for the audience to know if they're definitely in search of a new career path, your firm will be definitely someone that they would like to contact, at least have an initial conversation with, and I promise that they will not be disappointed.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's really what CER is about, is like, you know, even at the slightest, just your first call, your first interaction, like our biggest thing. And what I really love about this is having people feel seen, heard, and valued, and like that they weren't just another number. And I think so much in life, we go through so much motion that we forget that there's another human on the other side, that we can actually maybe build a great relationship. And here we are now, you know, like this is a perfect testimony of like where this relationship can go, whether it's me or somebody on the team.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kelsi, what does it take to build a successful recruiting, executive recruiting business? What do you think are some ingredients that will take to make the secret sauce?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So for my experience, I would say adaptability, resilient, grit, urgency. So you have to really, like in recruiting, you have to really love urgency. So if you're somebody who likes to take your time and have all the time in the world, this is not the job for you. You have to understand that you are always competing against your competitor, against the person right down the street. You know, you have to thrive off that high energy, and you really have to be adaptable. Like things are always changing in this market. It's so similar to the real estate market in general. There's always going to be give and take. And so if you're not willing to be adaptable and to go with what it needs to be and kind of improve and evolve along the way, then I don't know if you will really truly like get to where you want to go to. You might be stagnant. And so like for me, I'm such an overachiever. So like I set my goals really high, and I don't meet them all the time. Most of the time I don't, but I think what I've learned through this is if you have grit and if you have what it takes and you have the passion, I think passion is really what separates so many people from like just running a business to like actually a thriving organization that's really impacting people's lives. And I think just getting people who really want to be a part of that story. And so that's personally what I believe. People are our product. And so people are everything. And like in our industry, there is no other tangible things in between. It's really about that. And so that would be like my 2 cents, is really being able to just go all in and be a student and continuously learn.
I love what you just said about, you know, being the product. I think I will rephrase that and I will say, in your business, people are your real estate.
Yes, they are. They are our real estate. They're the entire, from start to finish, they're your entire transaction, and they're the ones that are either going to make your business or, you know, the business will change, you know. And so really people are sometimes underestimated, and I think people can either get you to where the company wants to go, or you as leaders will lose great talent because you don't understand that it's not about the buildings. It's not about the, you know, how fancy everything looks on the outside. It's really about the people behind the scenes and in the front of the scenes that are running and driving that business forward.
Absolutely right. I used to say this very often. All management companies have assets. They have money. They invest money. They have resources. They have training. They have technology. They have all the tools that they need to succeed. But what's this good for if you can find the people that actually are making proper use of those tools, and the people that will make it happen You could have the best in the world. If you're missing the people part, you're not going to be all that successful.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so detrimental to a business if somebody doesn't really understand that that's got to be at the forefront. Tenants are people, people are everywhere, and people are in general what really makes or breaks organizations and just in general in life. And so all the other things kind of come afterwards. So you're totally right about companies really understanding that that is the most important piece.
Kelsi, I want to talk a little bit about what is known as the Great Resignation. And I want to touch on this. You're a very important piece in the whole real estate picture and property management, multifamily picture. So you definitely see things different than operators are seeing them, or vendors are seeing them, other supplier vendors. I'd like to get your take on how do you see that we got here, and where are we in a process? Are we still early in a process? Do you think this is about to be behind us? Where are we heading? And how do we make things better? Like, how do we improve? How do we solve as an industry this terrible labor shortage situation?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'll try to unpack it as best as I can. So the Great Resignation, it's so interesting because I feel like out of 2020, there was a huge blessing that many of us experienced, and many of us really had to center ourselves as individuals, as people in our families, as our friends, as our communities, and as our work. Work, I always say, is your second biggest thing, a part of your life. Your family and friends are first, but work is very integrated. You usually spend 40 plus hours easily a week, if not a lot more, with those people in your life. And so I think there was a huge evaluation on what was missing, and we kind of got a taste of it, through 2020. And I don't think it's behind us. I think we're just getting started of this whole new trend, and it's not even really a trend, it's just a new way of life. It's a new perspective, it's a new lens. It was kind of like we shed what was that old tradition of how we carried that up into this point. And in some way, I feel like the universe had to shake us and say, okay, let's really take this opportunity and evaluate what really matters. And I think it's going to be here for the future. I don't think it's going anywhere. And I don't think it's a fad. I don't think it's just like a moment in time and people will come to their senses. I think people really recognize, and I always encourage them, figure out what really matters to you, because what matters to me might not be the same as the person next to me. But at this end of the day, what I do know is that, the Great Resignation has really changed how we operate as businesses, how we operate as, in our community, and what's important. And I honestly feel like people are a lot more happier, and they're more fulfilled because they're finally experiencing this different landscape out there and these different opportunities that are finally becoming more adaptable. I always say the companies that are not willing to change and adapt and evolve, there's plenty of companies out there, right? They're like, no, we want to stick to our ways. That's how we've been able to build the business for the last 30 years. This is the way we want to go. Immediately back in, having everybody report to the office, and, all these different moving pieces. And the reality is everybody has a choice, but sometimes those choices come with some serious sacrifices. And I think this is the time where we all can learn, we all can become students, we all can try new things. And it doesn't mean that this new school version is necessarily the only way, but I do think there's so much there. It's not going anywhere, and I'm a big believer that it's really cool to witness this, and to be a part of this, because we talk to people every single day. And there's a lot of continuity across the board about what matters to people now.
Yeah, I happen to be of the same opinion. I think one of the good things that came out of this whole lockdown and COVID situation was that we got to spend more time with our families, with the loved ones, with the friends. And then we learned that we actually like to do that more than what we,
Yes.
what we used to, and we don't really want to give this away and go back to the old ways of doing business. There's another thing that happened that I've seen as a component of that just kind of maybe coincided, but I don't think it 100% coincided. It's just something that's adjacent to the lockdowns and COVID and everything. The gig economy has exploded because people being at home, they wouldn't go out to, eat. They will order Uber Eats or use other services, and also they would use people that do this as a gig. You want to work, you're gonna flip the switch on, and you're available to drive as an Uber driver. You're tired, you don't feel like doing it today. You just turn the switch back off and you go to your own life, and then you just work on an as-needed basis. You don't have any bosses. You're your own boss. That's a very tough competition for most businesses, because most of the businesses, they don't have this business model. They can't afford to really tell people work when you want, work from where you want. They just don't have. You have to physically be there. So in order for those businesses to compete, like you said, they had to change. They had to improve their offers. And I strongly believe that those that choose to do nothing and just wait, hoping that things will go back to the old normal, I think they're gonna be in for a lot of pain. They will lose a lot. They'll end up with a lot of B and C players. And then the ones they're moving, they're making any type of moves. I'm not saying just great moves, just any moves are better than no moves at all. And they're gonna end up with better players. What's your take on this, Kelsi?
Yeah, very good points. I think the gig economy, what is really cool about it is people now have so much more autonomy. They have so many more options. Technology is changing all the time, and everybody's needs are always changing. I think we were so conformed for so long. Like, this was the only way. Like, you get out of high school, you go to college, then you find your lifelong career. But the reality is, like, that worked, and that was very successful for a very long time. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I think now we're entering into a new era, though, where the roadmap is different. And I think it's important to embrace and to accept and to challenge and to allow people to say, you want to go left, you want to go right, you want to go straight. There's so many more options now that are readily available. And I think people are now trying to taste all these different options out there and say, wow, you know what? 10 years ago, I might have never thought I could do this, or I wouldn't have even imagined that this would be available to me. And kudos to all those people who are going out of their way, trying new things and not listening to society, and just kind of going and seeing what works for them. And I think with companies and organizations, right, it's like, okay, what really matters to them? If it's, you want to just kind of keep things average, and you want to just, keep showing up every day and hoping for the best, and you're not really willing to continuously be a student, you're kind of checked out. That's okay. That's a choice that you're making for your organization and as leaders. But those folks, like you said, those A players, or those people who are like, you know what, I want more fulfillment. So many organizations can provide that and collaborate with their own team to learn what that would look like, and do trial and error, beta phases, things like that. You don't have to be married to these new ideologies that are coming out. But what if, it just goes back to like trying new food, right? Like, I am really bad about, like, I know what I like, and I always want to get that one item wherever I go. But my husband's always like, yeah, but what if you just tried this new thing on the menu, and then you were very impressed, and now that's something new that you wanted to add? I think it's so similar to organizations. I don't think it's a matter of get rid of all the things that set you up for success today. Just be willing to continuously learn and listen to the people in your organization. They will tell you. You don't have to take that responsibility on and know that all yourself. You've got all these amazing human beings who have different gifts and talents, so use them. That's what people want. And then you might choose, out of the 5, you might choose 1 or 2, and be very happy with that. So I just think it's continuously being adaptable, challenging the status quo, going forward and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's so much value into asking your frontliners out there, what's their opinion? They're the experts. If you're up at the corporate level, you're probably not an expert in many of those things that happen on the ground. Just ask the people on the ground, and they'll tell you. Like, this
Yes.
is how you learn. And I love that you keep bringing up being a student. I'm of the same type of mindset that I'm a student of life. I want to learn. I always want to learn. That's one of the reasons why I started a podcast, because I could get so many individuals, successful individuals like you, that could share their life experience and wisdom and so many great things that it just makes me a better person. Just having those conversations, just learning, and it's an
Yes.
ongoing process. It never really ends. It never really ends.
And
Yeah.
you're 33 episodes in. That's huge. Like, you've had the opportunity to speak to 33 different conversations, and look how much you've probably grown as well see people on the receiving end too. I mean, kudos to you, because you're actually living out what you are trying to educate and allow other people to be exposed to. You are doing that yourself. You're being autonomous. You're going for it. You're trying something new. And I think that I really admired that about you.
Thank you. Thank you. It takes a lot of effort. It's not an easy thing. I get a question always, if I get to sleep, and I do get to sleep enough, 6-7 hours a night. It's what I need, but it's not about what people think it's about how much sleep you get. Of course, that's important that you get, but if you sleep 7 hours a night, the day has 24 hours, so you have 17 hours left. The question is not how much you sleep, is what do you do with the 17 hours when you don't sleep? And then in all reality, you could do a lot. And it's only your choice. It's a matter of choice. How do you choose to spend the 17 hours that you're awake every day? And I'm making my own choices. I don't say that they're for everybody. They're not easy. Again, sometimes they go against my default mode, right? So I had to kill that default mode and get up at 4 o'clock and walk for an hour in the neighborhood and do all the things that I do. But again, it's a matter of choice. Nobody's pushing me. Nobody's forcing me to do anything. Everything is strictly at free will. And I try, because why the heck not?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Why not? Why not? We only have this one life, and I don't want to look behind and look back and say, I have regrets that I wish I would have tried. I want to try everything that goes through this. I want to try everything and see what sticks, and what doesn't stick, we learn, right? We just learn. It's not about winning or losing. It's just it's about the experience. So for sure.
I love it.
Now, Kelsi, I wanted to ask you a question about candidates. Let's say that you have a client and they have a set budget. They give you a budget. Let's say my budget has a range. It's 100 or 120K a year. That's the base salary, plus other benefits, whatever. Let's go to the base salary, and you find a candidate that fits the profile. You know that they're a great candidate. The challenge that you have when you present a candidate to the client is that they're not within that range. They want maybe 135. That's their price for base salary. Do you find this easy to present to the client? If you even present it, if it's like a $15,000 difference on their highest range that they intended to pay, or you're just saving them for later, saving the candidate because of that gap in the salary. How do you typically proceed in a situation like this? And then what's the typical response that you're getting?
Yeah, very good question. So this is a very important question. And I think this is what really separates those who are very good at their craft at recruiting and those who are just learning or who might be taught a different way. It's my job to go find you the best type of leader. And there's barriers. Here's the box. That's just kind of an idea or a benchmark, but where you really stand out compared to a lot of the different recruiters out there is that your willingness to go outside that box and say, this candidate in my gut and all the moving pieces and just years of experience, most of the candidates we present are going to be over that comp range. And it would be negligent of me to not give you the opportunity to see what is out there. Here is where we're at. I'll allow you to still make that decision, but I'm not going to withhold that candidate if on my gut, I'm like, this is the one. Like, I feel very confident. And I think many people are taught and trained to kind of be like job order takers, yes, ma'am, yes, sirs, I call them. And they're afraid. They're like, well, this is the parameters they gave me. These are the expectations. This is the money. I can't go outside that box. But I got off the phone with a really great candidate, but they don't meet everything on that box. I really encourage my team. That's just a benchmark. Really, where you're going to be exceptionally good at your craft is in the field, in the market, understanding who your client is, understanding what this candidate brings value to, and still make that introduction possible. If that's what really makes sense. Now, it's not saying that we want to push clients to always pay more money, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So like if I was able to provide you somebody that was 10K over, but that was like the most exceptional, that is really going to make a difference in your organization, matched everything and above, would you really allow that 10,000 to still be searching for the next 3 months because you just weren't willing to figure out a way and find a solution that made sense? And there's many recruiters out there that will not do that. And I think it's a shame, because you as the client, that is our job. That's why you hire us. That's why we partner together, because it's my job to be able to find you that gem, that unicorn, or that ideal candidate, and over deliver what that looks like. And so I think with compensation, if you really are providing that value and an educational piece and why you feel this candidate really might be a strong match, then I think most of the time our clients are very understandable, and most of the time they're going to find a way. Once they meet them and they go through those interview rounds and they already have buy-in with them as well as the candidate, they will find a solution to make it work. I very seldomly had anybody get off the phone and say, yeah, they were perfect for the job, but I'm just not willing to find that money. Let's keep hunting. That gives me pause when I find a client like that, because it's like, okay, what can we find solutions to? Now, if we're talking 50,000 above, right, there's always a healthy, part of where I want to present candidates. So if they're way out of comp range, that's another story, right? So we're talking maybe $15,000 difference. And most of the time clients will say, I'm just so glad you still presented them, because I probably would have had my blinders up and thought this is the only thing I can find in the market. So I think clients are very much more adaptable, especially ever since, 2020. I think now the market is constantly changing and the demand and the needs are always shifting. And so if you really want those top players, you have to find a way of how, and it's not even just comp, it's like culture. I mean, there's so much more that goes into all of the grand total package. But yes, I would say clients are very flexible and they will listen, but you really have to show and earn and get that opportunity to really partner with them and not be job order takers. That's kind of on you. That's your responsibility.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear your take on us, because I ask people, especially recruiters, executive recruiters, I ask them all the time, and that seems to be a trend, the norm, that they're actually still presenting, even if the candidate is higher priced than what the range was, initial range, they're still wanting to present them and give the client the opportunity to say no if they if they decide that they do not want to pay that larger amount. And that's absolutely fine. One other thing that, Kelsi, that I'm seeing happening in the market a lot is that current employers are making counter offers. When someone gives notice, they found a different opportunity, counter offers. So I wanted to ask you, how often do you have candidates that you're representing that are taking counter offers and decide to stay with the current company? What would be the percentage, you will say, roughly, of people that decide to stay and not move with a new opportunity?
So I can speak from my experience. I would say about 30% are, going through the entire interview process and then thereafter accepting their counter with their current organization. I really saw that shift in 2021, end of probably third, fourth quarter. That's when I really saw that the dynamics were changing. And this is a really good conversation. So something that I personally think that is, where did this come from? It's not that counteroffers never existed before, but why is it becoming so prevalent? Like, why are you asking me this question? Because it's a real thing happening in today's market. I personally think I've really thought about it. I think after 2020, a lot of people went through a lot. There was a lot of changes, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people who are with organizations, whether they're there forever, for many years, or the newest person on the block. And I think there's like some PTSD. I really do. I think people are afraid. They're more afraid to accept new challenges. They're more afraid to just go for it. They're more afraid than where they were before. So they're in some ways kind of choosing comfortability than going for opportunity. And that is something I've really witnessed, is where did that shift really take place? And I might be very controversial with this topic, but this is really my observation, is I think people got let go. Lots of moving pieces happened. Businesses were shutting down left and right. So people who ended up kind of were able to stick it out with that group or that organization, right? They just went through a very traumatic experience with their loved ones, with their family, with their community, who all lost jobs, who also got sick, who companies were literally closing their doors. And I think they're kind of holding on to this idea that, at one point they were a lot more open-minded to taking calculated risk. And now I believe they're kind of choosing to just stay where they are. And that's one component. The other component, I believe, with counter offers is, every time I get on an interview or a call with somebody, I want to know, what's your motivating reason to get on this call with me today? Why are we here? Why are we talking? There's something going on. Everyone's like, oh, I'm open to hearing new opportunities. Okay, but let's dig deeper. My job isn't here to sell you on anything. I really want to get to learn what motivates you, what is going on in your world at work, that, if they're happy. And I always say there's the 4 C's that I live by. And I will say 2 or 3 of the C's have to be compromised in order for it to really make sense for you to make a change. And if more than, if less than 2 are not being compromised, then I usually will, actually do the right thing and say, you have a really good opportunity. You should stay where you are. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. And actually, I've told many candidates that, like, you actually have a great opportunity where you are. So it makes sense for you to stay. And the 4 C's that we live by here at CER is, it's commute, culture, compensation, and challenges. And so kind of to break that down is, commute luckily has really kind of been eliminated for a lot of different opportunities. So people have been able to work from home or have a hybrid schedule. Culture is everything. And of course, that's a topic that's very hot and will continuously be very important. And then, compensation is also a very important piece for a lot of people. But I would say challenge as well. What do I mean by that is, if you feel stagnant, or you don't feel like you're learning, or you don't feel like you're being challenged as a leader to continuously learn, and that's important to you, they will leave. So I always say, why are we on this call today? What is your motivating reason? And if those 4 are not being compromised, well, you as the executive recruiter really should identify, okay, why are we moving forward in this process? There's not a lot of motivation for this person to leave. Or most of the time, there's 3 of them being compromised. And they're like, I need to get out of here. This is not a good work environment for me. It's not aligning with my values. And those candidates, you're like, okay, this opportunity really makes sense for us to move forward. And those candidates typically tend to not accept counters, because they're already all in with getting out of that organization. So I think every time when there's a counter and somebody accepts it, a year later, they come back every time and they're like, yeah, now I'm ready to leave. But what happens is we're more skeptical then, because when you go all in and you get an offer with our client or something, and then you backed out, kind of blindsided in some sense, and now you want to come back a year later, it's a little difficult, because you have to keep that in mind of, okay, well, what is going to be different about this situation, or what did you learn this last year, instead of just taking comfortability or what you already know, just for more money. I mean, again, there's so many moving pieces with counter offers. That's just one perspective. There's many perspectives. So I wouldn't say I'm totally against them, but I can see a totally different perspective in my seat.
I like how you build your process to eliminate, I guess, to lower the possibility of people accepting counters. I don't think there's, at the end of the day, anything wrong with it. It's an experience. You definitely don't want to put in all the work to present a candidate, actually get an offer, get everything set up, and someone is changing their mind because they had real reasons. Why were they looking in the first place? But I like your process a lot, like asking the questions to just kind of not eliminate, but lower that percentage right there. Kelsi, what would you say is your number one or the main reasons for candidates to put themselves on the job market and looking for opportunity? What are you hearing as the top reasons for them to search for new opportunities?
Culture, every single time. It's culture. Culture is the number one thing. It's not money. It's not commute. It's not being challenged. It's always culture. And having maybe a toxic leader within the organization that's really affecting their mental health, or not having autonomy and the ability to feel empowered to do your job, to be hired to do what you were set out to do, and be limited with that. Culture and culture is like the number one thing from the most entry level to the most top C-level suites. I get that comment almost every time I'm on a call. I really wish this job would work out, but the culture is just not in alignment. And then we dive in, we dig in, what's going on there? Help me understand, what is it that is motivating you on this call today? And, culture is such a big topic that sometimes people can really minimize what culture is, like, oh, just getting drinks with friends at happy hour. But that's maybe one perspective. Culture is so much more than that. Like, it really does have to align with who you are as a person, to be able to thrive and be successful. And there's many organizations out there that are still figuring it out, there's never going to be 100% like a perfect company. If the day you start thinking there's going to be a perfect company, I still have yet to meet one brand that I'm like, even CER is not the perfect company. We are constantly learning and we are constantly growing. And so I think it's just understanding, what organization you really align yourself with. What are you willing to accept? What are you willing to no longer tolerate? And toxic leadership is probably the biggest component, even again, at the C-suite. I always say there's usually one toxic leader sitting up at the top, that we will always find. And so it will either be the detriment of your business if you don't figure that out, or it will be the biggest success of your business if you are willing to get in and dig in and figure out where are the loopholes, what can we work on.
Yeah, that's very amazing perspective. And culture is really not something that you build and then you're done and you go on vacation. Culture is an ongoing thing. Like you said, we're not the perfect. You mentioned your company. You're not the perfect company. No company out there is perfect, for sure. But you just have to. You have to have a culture. Is a living organism, because probably the best definition that I found about culture is that it's the sum of all employees' behaviors. So then when you build culture, you're seeking a certain type of behavior. And the way you build that, in my opinion, is that you're incentivizing the type of behavior that you want to see your employees exhibit.
Yes.
So that's from an employer perspective, from a leadership perspective. But then on an employee perspective, is that, they have choices. They're looking at, hey, am I part of, what they're trying to build here? Do I want to be part of this? Or do I, this is not for me? And it's okay for you to say it's not for me. Like, it doesn't have to. I work for companies that had amazing cultures, and I work for companies that, I guess, struggle in ways with culture, but ultimately was still my option. But to go back to what you just said, that people have PTSD. I speak offline with a lot of individuals that are unhappy at their current job, and I tell them, like, nothing stops you, especially today. So based on recent Department of Labor reports, there are over 2 jobs available for each able-bodied person. We're not talking about each qualified person, each person that's able-bodied, that could move around and like do certain things. So in a situation like this, I think nobody should be worried about finding opportunities. Why they're worried, I understand. You just mentioned all the reasons. They had that in the past happening. They see their family suffering, so they don't want to take this leap of faith and try the new. This brings me to my next question, Kelsi. We have such a labor deficit, right? As I said, each person that's able to work has 2 jobs available out there waiting for them. How does this affect your business? Is it easier for you to do business with your clients? Does it make it harder? How is it? How did this change the dynamics versus when you first started, or like 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Recruiting is never easy, and I don't think it ever gets easier. I think recruiting in general is always hard. There's always challenges. It's either a candidate market or an employer market, so similar to the housing market, either buyer or seller. And so you are constantly in this shifting zone every few years of back and forth. And that's where adaptability and grit and changing your techniques, changing your different approaches, and really evolving is what it's going to take. I think right now the challenge is, people have much more higher expectations of what they want, and I think people are no longer settling. So that actually does make things harder, to really find, and it challenges you to be able to identify a culture match. It's no longer just about qualifications. It's no longer just does these box checks on the company, and then also for the candidate. We're really looking for that energy, for that synergy, for what leader is going to be reporting directly into this candidate, and vice versa. What role are they going to be playing? So I think culture, again, is still what is the biggest challenge, and will continuously be a big challenge for recruiters, because you have to really understand the company you are representing and the brand and partnership, as much as you have to understand that candidate's needs, desires, and their end goal of what they want to accomplish. And so I think that that's always going to be a difficult thing to navigate through, because it will require you to put in more work, to put in more time, to listen to those stories. Every recruiting firm is different. There's a lot of staffing agencies or different industries in general, the tech space and healthcare and all these different factors that, it's very transactional. It's very much, hey, we got this job in, we got to fill it. Let's just get an abled body, right? But where CER is so different, and so many different groups out there, is that we spend hours and hours and hours learning about our candidates and clients. And that in itself is always going to be a challenge, because you're always going against time, and time is something that you don't get back. So I think that's a really good question. It's always going to be a challenge in the recruiting world, no matter what landscape we live in today.
Kelsi, I want to ask you now to share with the audience one where the wildest, the craziest, situation or story that happened to you as a recruiter, the oddest, right, situation that you had with a candidate, with a client.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was really trying to think of this question. I have a lot of crazy stories that happen, especially like in my old days, like lots of talk about like learning how to solution seek on a very short time frame. You're like, okay, this situation isn't going as planned. But there was one that just recently, happened that I thought was pretty funny. So even though it didn't happen to me directly, it's still a recruiting story. So one of my executive leaders, clients, candidate, he recently went back into the market, looking for a new opportunity and confidentially. And it was funny because the position he was applying for is very high level. And his name, and he recently unfortunately had to let go somebody, a regional manager on his team. And they both work for the same group. They both have the same name. And so the person he was supposed to interview in a different state, they were supposed to get that all coordinated and all set up. Well, needless to say, the same candidate, that regional, ended up applying for the job. There was some miscommunication. They invited him in. They did the whole interview process, and they're finally ready to make an offer. And finally, the other leader was like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you guys in like a month or so. Like, are you guys still interested in me?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? We've been interviewing you this whole time. We're ready to make an offer." It literally just happened to be a totally different person underneath that leader who just let him go. So he's like, "Well, you can hire the both of us," at the end of the day. So he's like, they literally didn't connect the dots that we were two completely different people. So I just thought that was pretty hilarious. And I think that they ended up actually making the offer to that regional to have them, join their team. So there's always these crazy stories if you're like, how did this all happen? And I guess it's a fate thing. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a really amazing story and very entertaining too. I hope you worked out for both of them at the end of the day. Kelsi, what are the top complaints from your candidates, the ones that you represent, regarding the recruiting process that they're going through typically, or in general, right? The recruiting process. What are the top complaints?
I always say time kills all deals. Time kills all deals. It's the time. There's not enough companies out there, and I hope that this will continuously be an educational process and a shift and a change, that if you are taking 3 to 4 months to make a decision through an interview process, if you think that is the one candidate you want to join your team, it's too late. It's too late. That candidate already has 2 or 3 offers on the table. No matter what psychological buy-in or how good we are at our job, if you are not able to make an executive decision and come to a yay or a nay, let's go all in, let's pass on this candidate, you've already lost them. And so if the one piece of advice that I would tell any organization out there, whether they partner with CER or not, is get very intentional about your recruiting process. Be efficient. That doesn't mean you have to, compromise what it is that you're looking for or feel rushed. You just have to get laser focused. And I always say about 3 interviews is really the maximum based on the level of opportunity and whatnot. And get very methodical about what that looks like. And we at CER like to give a bird's eye view, a high level, what our candidate can expect, so that they are also involved in the process. They're not constantly like, I don't know really where we left off. I'm not really sure what next steps are. Are we saying 7 interviews, 1 more interview? Is there assessments in the process? They need to also be educated in that process so that they're all in as well. And so honestly, time kills all deals. That's the #1 complaint. And people don't like the feeling that they still have to continuously prove their value when there's 2 other companies that gave them a hard offer letter and said, we want you. It doesn't matter how great your brand is, how great your culture is, how amazing the impact is. If you cannot make a decision, that is your culture. That means there is something going on with your leadership team that you guys are not empowered to make decisions.
I'm going to say this: if you're not making quick decisions regarding recruiting, you're not that great of a brand. Okay.
Yes.
You are not that great of a brand that you think you are. So be careful when you just kind of buy into drink your own Kool-Aid, because at the end of the day, your customer, potential customer, your candidate's experience, their perception, is their perception is their reality. At the end
Yes.
of the day, it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what they think.
Yes.
And with the opportunities being, so many out there, you're gonna be the one hurting, most
Yep.
likely more than they are.
Yep, 100%. It's the biggest thing that I cannot vocalize enough. You've got to figure that process out.
Kelsi, in the last part of our conversation, I want to go to a very few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. What is some piece of advice that you would give someone that's ready to enter the real world, finding a job? They're just finishing high school or college. They're out in the real world looking for an opportunity. What is one piece or a few pieces of advice that you have for them?
Find a mentor. I think that is very underutilized. Find somebody in a seat that you really admire, you really respect. I say on all aspects of your life, but in your career, find somebody that you're like, I want to hunt you down. I want to spend every waking moment with you. I want to learn all the wisdom of how you got to where you are, and just go for the opportunity. I think so many people think, well, I don't know, like, you have to go for it. You have to be willing to do that. That for me was my education. Is I always throughout my life found mentors in every single aspect, even through kindergarten all the way to where I am today. I surround myself with people who are a lot more knowledgeable, more experienced, more wise in this very singular aspect. And that is how I gained my education, is through mentorship. So I highly encourage anybody entering into the workspace, into the real world, go find mentors, somebody that even if they're not the best mentor, you're still going to learn something. You will still learn either some good qualities or things you're like, I don't know if I'm going to take on that approach, but I'm glad you still taught me it.
Yeah, I love it. It's model the masters, right?
Yes.
You're looking at people that they have already been where you want to go, and you just follow the trail. It's
Yes.
it's not that complicated, right? Kelsi, books. What are your favorite books? Fiction, non-fiction, professional books? Tell us the
Oh,
quick
yes.
title.
I love Good to Great. That was a really big book that contributed a lot of CER, formulating of like what can we be really great at. And I also love anything with Simon Sinek. He's one of my favorite people, thought leaders that I'm really, really admire. I also love, mysteries, and I love mysteries. So I'm actually like reading one right now. It's really good. And so anything that's kind of, I don't know, that I have the creative side and then the work side. So I try to balance it out. Especially with work being so consuming, I try to enjoy some more creative stuff right now, so I can have an outlet that's healthy for me. So, but I love, Good to Great and The Energy Bus. I mean, there's so many good books out there.
Next one. How did a failure or an apparent failure help you set up or build future success?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say getting the right people on the bus is really something. I don't know if I'd call it a failure, but it's an opportunity to really learn of, okay, what are you willing to, as a leader and as a growing leader, what people need to be on the bus and what people have to get off the bus, and really understanding and take action and become continuously a student and not be so upset with yourself. People are the most challenging thing, I think, in businesses. People management is really hard. And I think even as a recruiting firm, people are a product, but people still, that doesn't mean you're necessarily a master, at understanding people. So I think that is a big lesson for me. And I'm continuously learning that, is really finding those types of leaders that I want to join this journey, and those people who we just might not be the right fit at this time.
Kelsi, in the past 3 to 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Oh, that's a good question. Boundaries. I think boundaries are super important. I think setting yourself up for success, understanding what is it that you need to feel recharged, re-energized, so you can be the best when you're on these calls or you're engaged with anybody, is what is it that you really need to fill your cup back up. And so for me, I have had to learn the last several years and will continuously learn that what I need is going to be different than the person next to me. And there's no right or wrong. It's just, staying true to yourself and staying true to, I'm not an extrovert. So I'm a social introvert. I've taught myself that I would be an extrovert, but I'm actually an introvert. And so whenever I'm done with work, I've learned that it's okay to not like be on and to be completely social and engaged. Sometimes it's nice to just observe and listen and just enjoy the conversations and not be spearheading the conversation. So that's something I'm continuously learning and growing. I don't know if I'll ever be a master of it, but it's something I'm really learning right now.
Kelsi, when you lose focus on or you're feeling overwhelmed, how do you get back on track? What type of things you do to get you back on track?
Tennis is a great outlet for me. So I'm always on the courts like at least 5 times a week. I recently got into pickleball, so that's like another great outlet. So I think like for me, being active in doing something that doesn't require a lot of mental capacity, and just going out there and getting the energy and running around. And also for me, I really like to talk things through. So like I would call my very maybe top 2 people in my life that at that time, whether it's my business coach or whether it's my mentor or whether it's my husband, and just say, can I just please, have a moment to, talk out loud what I'm going through right now so I can get it out of my head, put it out there and let it go, and I think that that's something that's really worked for me personally.
Kelsi, thank you very much for taking the time to join us here on Multifamily Chronicles. In closing, I'd like to give you the opportunity to maybe answer a question that I didn't ask, or to speak about something that you're very passionate about and we didn't have the opportunity to cover during our conversation, and also leave some contact information for the show audience to contact you if they they want to reach out to you.
Yes, absolutely. I think this kind of resonates throughout this entire conversation, but I can't stress it enough, is that I'm very people focused and relationship focused. So, at the end of the day, like if you're really looking for somebody to care about your business, to actually care about you as a human being and like what you are looking for in your next opportunity or who you want to join as your team, relationships are so crucial and they cannot be sidetracked. They can't be the back burner. And so somebody or companies and people, I think that is something I cannot stress enough, is relationships are everything. Your network is your net worth. It speaks volumes at work and outside of work, in your own community and life. And so that's just one thing I can't ever stress enough about CER and the vision. We're just very refreshing. We're very authentic. And that's super intentional. We're just showing up as who we are. And there's none of this fake corporate, like, let me put on my work Kelsi. And then when I'm off this call, I'll be just normal Kelsi. I'm trying to show that you can be just who you are, and people actually really love that, and people want that. They want your uniqueness that you bring. In order to, if you want to get a hold of me, feel free to send me a direct message on LinkedIn. You can also just reach out to our office or anybody at our team. All of us here are absolutely phenomenal. We would love to hear your guys' stories out there. And then I can always share, our email address and our phone number as well. But follow us on our company LinkedIn page at Cory Executive Recruiting.
Kelsi, again, thank you so much for coming, for taking the time to come speak with me right here, and to share a lot of great insights with the audience. I hope to get you back here soon. I always invite my guests to return if all possible. I love to have a follow-up conversation, because there's still just so much to talk about when it comes to recruiting. There's so many things that are changing out in the world, and obviously recruiting is affected too. It's is not an exception from those. So thank you very much for being here with us. Everybody, this is Multifamily Chronicles. We're wrapping up episode number 33, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.